Two, what told me it stopped. So, there we go. What is up, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Shred Show. I am so excited to be hanging out with my good friend, President and COO of FinLocker, Brian Vieaux. Guys, he not only is an incredible friend, he's one of the most impactful leaders in all the mortgage industry. Plus, he is leading by example, which is even more impressive to me. And he's been doing it for years at this point. We're going to be getting into the winning formula for 2024 and what Brian has been doing in particular for the last couple of years to continue to make a difference and add value to our industry. So, ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? It is time to shred. Ladies and gentlemen, like I mentioned, I cannot tell you how excited I am. Not only has Brian been a close friend of mine, but he's been a mentor of me. And he's somebody that it's been fun to watch Brian over the years, even as he has started the FinTech Friday podcast, which we're going to be getting into. But more than that, he is truly an inspiring leader with his time in the mortgage industry. He continues to lead by example, which, Brian, to me is so incredibly impressive. I'm humbled, I'm honored, and I'm stoked to have you shred with me today. What's up, man?
Yeah, it's going to be fun to be here. I've shredded before with you. I still remember one of our first times on camera together. You were in Detroit, in the Detroit area in Michigan, visiting some folks, and I think I saw it on LinkedIn. You and I met on social, which we could kind of get, tie all the tracks back to that. But I remember messaging you and saying, "Hey, dude, drop by my office. I got my sales team here." And you came in, camera in hand, and busted into our conference room, and you and I did a little impromptu shredding way back in the day.
Bro, I cannot believe that. I actually forgot that's when the first time you and I met in person, which is funny because, we had met on LinkedIn, we had chatted, and we could tie this entire conversation about that's how our relationship started. And now it's blossomed into what it is. And we hung out last week at NBA. We saw each other, and we've literally shredded the mountain together. You and I have hung out here in Park City together at times. So it's so much fun to see how a conversation can start on LinkedIn, on a social media platform, and become what it is today. And we're actually going to get into that. But you and I actually had a conversation at NBA last week that I think is so relevant right now more than ever, because you in particular, you started on your podcast, your content journey about 2 years ago, and you're still going strong. The FinTech Friday is what the podcast is. FinTech Friday, right?
FinTech Fridays, yeah.
Every single week, you bring an incredible guest to add value to the industry. And it started as something that you didn't expect. And then it has continued to grow. It has continued to flourish. And now, I was hanging out with you and somebody's like, "Hey, Brian, love the FinTech Friday podcast." And so it's amazing to see over the last couple of years what it has done for you, for your brand, for FinLocker. And what I wanted to do today was have a real conversation and kind of hear your experience and your journey with starting it. Because even while we were at MBA, I had people coming up to me, saying, "Hey, Josh, I see others doing podcasting, creating content. I don't think it's for me. I don't think now's the time," which I completely disagree with. Right. You and I both know, now more than ever, we should be out there. But I want to hear kind of about your experience. But before we do that, I want to give you the opportunity. For those who may not know Brian Vieaux, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about FinLocker. Tell us about what you continue to do for us in our industry.
So, I've been at it for a while. I entered the mortgage industry in 1991, right out of college, as an originator. So, I was slinging loans, as they say, back in the early 90s. Totally different vibe. Well, by the way, the par rate on a 30-year fixed when I got in the business was somewhere with a 10 handle. So, not going to be the guy that says it's not so bad right now, but I was writing double-digit loans back in the day, but it is pretty rough right now. It's a different kind of market. But I spent 28 years in the primary mortgage production space. You and I met when I was running the third-party business channels at Flagstar Bank. And towards the end of my run at Flagstar, I got connected and really got an inside glimpse of this company, FinLocker. Some friends of mine were the founders. They are the founders, I should say. They're still involved. And as I started to look at what FinLocker was solving for back then, this goes back like 6 years, some clarity came to me around, what the industry needed and needs and will need going forward, and what was lacking for consumers. And so, we basically, I'll say this analogy: FinLocker is like the Rocket Money for everybody that's not Rocket Mortgage. And what does that mean? If you think about what Rocket Money is, which is the product, it was formerly known as Truebill. Quicken or Rocket acquired the business. They rebranded it Rocket Money. And it's a personal financial management app. It's a tool, but it's really a lead magnet, a customer acquisition tool, an engagement strategy up the funnel, right? And that's where this industry and all of financial services is going. Is there's a race to get to the consumer as early in their financial life as possible, so that you start building that relationship, build that trust, and when they're ready, you at least are in the game to earn the right to win at that point. And so what we're doing for lenders of all sizes is we have a private white label solution that's really focused on financial fitness and home ownership readiness or preparedness. And we're helping originators find ways to get up the funnel and engage consumers much earlier in their financial life. And we happen to be in a market where it's never been more important. There's, depending on whose stats you believe, there's somewhere around 30 million pent-up first-time home buyers, that are in that normal age group where they would be buying homes. And for obvious reasons, inventory, affordability, they're not able to buy right now. And so this pool or this bubble is growing. And if you're not figuring out ways to engage with that population right now, when the market does move in a direction that opens it up, you're going to be left on the sidelines. So that's what we're here to helping lenders kind of find ways to reach, assist, engage, and nurture early journey home buyers.
Bro, there's so much in there that we could even unpack with this conversation that FinLocker does, because you mentioned right now more than ever, we're trying to stay in front of the consumer. We're trying to not only just get their attention, but to add value. It's like, hey, and not only that, but it's like when they're ready to finally make a move, whether it's first-time home buyers, whether it's, somebody who's bought multiple homes throughout their life, we all make changes and we all go through these life events, as we in the industry like to call them. And we may be ready to buy a home at this moment or at this moment. What's important is staying in front of the consumer, adding value for them for when they are ready. And thus, this entire conversation about podcasting, about showing up for the consumer for when they are, staying relevant for them, is what our conversation is all about today. Because when you started the FinTech Friday podcast, jumping back for when you started the FinTech Friday podcast, I'm sure you were kind of like, what? Like, why? Like, what is I see these other people. And again, you and I had the conversation before. I had the Shed Show. You had been on the Shed Show before, and you and I had talked a little bit about it. But what finally helped you understand that, almost 2 years ago, that was the time for you? What really kind of put you over and said, okay, I need to make this happen?
Yeah. So I think, Josh, one thing about me and others should know is I'm pretty transparent. So I'm not going to say something that's not true ever. I had no desire. I had, in my mind, no skill set to host a podcast, let alone guest on anybody's podcast. And I literally did it as a favor to a friend. So I had a friend who was building a platform, and part of the platform was to deliver original content to the housing finance industry. And because I was in the fintech space, I was assigned, voluntold, as they say, to be responsible for the Friday content, which that's what became FinTech Friday. So, 2 years ago, and I had no idea how to even reach out to people and say, hey, you want to come on my podcast that nobody's ever seen? So it started as a favor, and I'll be, again, super transparent. It was brutal for the first, 4 months, because I was scrambling to get guests, because this was new, and then B, just never been in that format. It was like I almost over prepared for the show with questions and blah 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 blah. And so it turns out that it was one of the best things I was ever asked or voluntold to do, because it's really evolved into something that, what I'll tell you today is that, like, getting in front of this camera, whether it's the camera that I'm staring at or if it's on this phone, is like second nature right now. I don't even think twice about it. It's, now that I've recorded 100 episodes of the podcast, it's just second nature. And I don't do, our show is no editing. We're a small operation. You're looking at pretty much the producer, the director, the editor, the guest, and then Diana on my team helps with some marketing and distribution. But it's, we're not over engineering this thing. It's really about conversations. And you've said the word conversations a bunch already on this episode. And I love that word, because right now in our industry, this is all about having conversations. You, as a frontline loan originator, it's never been important to have as many conversations as you can be having as possible, because that's another word for building your pipeline, building your database. And what I found is this podcast, my podcast, it's another conversation. Now, what's cool about it is it's me talking to a camera with a guest. So you and I are having a conversation, but we're having it at scale now with, potentially thousands of people, right? So what started as a favor has turned into something that I believe I've now developed and honed some confidence and maybe even some skill around this. But the other cool thing is like I said, I've recorded 100 episodes. So I think I've had a dozen repeats. So at least 80 or so people that I've had, 20 to 30 minute conversations with, who I probably otherwise wouldn't have had. And what I like to say is my podcast is an opportunity for me to talk to cool people about cool companies and cool products. And then if I'm learning something, then the hundreds or thousands or however many people, I don't really care how many people are watching, somebody else is going to learn along the way. And that's really what it's all about.
Okay. So there's, again, so much I want to unpack in this, because there's so many lessons you learned along the way. But you just mentioned something that I want to touch on. You and I, as we were getting ready for this, we kind of mentioned this, but something that a lot of executives in the space, especially, one of their biggest fears or one of their biggest concerns going into these conversations or starting a podcast or even creating content, they're worried about the number of viewers. They're worried about, like, hey, how, like, they almost see themselves like, well, hey, I'm somebody prestigious. I'm somebody with, an executive role. What if my video only gets 2 views? Isn't that bad for my brand in and of itself? People just aren't watching it. That means people don't care. Number one, you and I both are on the same way, totally disagree with it. But how did you start with that in the beginning? Because when you and I both know it is a grind, like you said, getting the guests together, preparing for the conversation. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. How did you deal? Like, was that something you were stressed about? It's like, hey, what if nobody watches this?
I wasn't, because it was so new to me that I didn't even know I didn't even know where to look for the metrics. So the friend I mentioned that I was doing a favor for, he was tracking all the metrics and he wasn't overly concerned. So I never got concerned. I've kind of always approached this, Josh, that whether it's one person that's watching or 10,000, it doesn't matter. If I can reach one person and one person can learn one nugget from my 20-minute conversation with somebody, then that's pretty cool, because I know I can honestly say that every conversation that I have, I'm learning something that I otherwise wouldn't have learned. So the 30 minutes that it took me to to do the conversation was valuable for me, whether one person or 1,000 people watched it. So I just don't really focus on that. Now, what I will say is that, and you hit on this a little bit when we were kind of teeing this up, is recently at NBA, yeah, I have people come up and say, "Hey, I see you all over LinkedIn. I love what you're doing." And what's been cool now is I don't really like, in probably the last 6 months, I haven't had to go find a guest for the podcast. I have people coming to me wanting to come on. And by the way, I never say no to anybody. I want to talk to everybody. I'll talk to anybody and everybody. And we're at a spot right now. I'm pretty proud of this because I was stressed out this time last year. We have, I think I told you this, the next episode I record, which I've scheduled for next week, will publish like December 11th. So I'm like a good, 6+ weeks ahead, and there's no better feeling than to have kind of that much, ahead of you. And I want to go deeper because I think there's I think about the local mortgage advisor who's wondering, should I do a podcast? Yeah, you should. And you should talk about your community. Make the podcast about your community and bring on cool people, cool companies, cool products in your community, and do a 20-minute talk, and you'll be amazed at what that does the next time you're going into Target or you're going into Starbucks. Somebody will say, "Oh man, I saw you on your podcast," and so it's worth it.
Bro, what you just said, every mortgage professional, whether you're a loan officer originating, mid-level management executive in the tech space, you got to go back and listen to what Brian just said. Everybody should have a podcast. I've said this for years. Gary Vaynerchuk, I take this from him. He's said this for years. Everybody should have a podcast, and you should be hyper-focused on local. And some people may be arguing, well, I'm a tech company. I want everybody in the industry, or I'm a loan officer that has, I'm licensed in many states. Great. Start small, and then you can grow outside of that. And like you said, cool companies with cool conversations with cool people. Like, people they want to tune in. If you're having the local bakery down the street who has an awesome scone that you love to get on, on the weekends with the family, have them on. It can be just something, especially for mortgage and real estate professionals too. This is a great opportunity to have these conversations with cool people. And then plus, Brian, you and I know mortgages are boring. Let's just call it as it is. If it's about mortgage all the time, people tune out.
That's right.
Even if, again, there's going to be a time and a place where they're ready to buy a new home or refinance. Absolutely. I'm not saying you can't, throw it in there that you're a mortgage professional, but they don't want to hear mortgage content all the time. It's just boring. And what you just said there, so many people, they struggle with that idea of like, well, I don't know how to get started. You did it. You just said, okay, well, I'm going to go figure it out. I've got a phone. I can see your Blue Yeti microphone sitting there. Like, you just kind of figure it out. You just get started and start recording. The fact that something that impresses me is that now, and I was with you when this actually happened, a guy that you didn't know, literally, you had no idea who he was. He came up and said, "Brian, I watch FinTech Friday podcast." And I looked at you like, bro. And it's kind of one of those moments that you're just like, holy cow. Like, I continue to put out this content. And that's all the guy said. He just said, "Hey, Brian, it's great to see you. Like, I watched FinTech Friday podcast. I appreciate what you do." We're not in it for this glory. We're not in it for the, hey, yes, I'm the FinTech Friday guy. I'm the Shred Show guy. That's not what we're after. We're in it to share value with our community, to share value with the people who, whether it's one person or 10,000 people watching, it's sharing that value, it's sharing that conversation with somebody else that maybe they got one thing, maybe they got a little bit out of it that made their day better, made them think a little bit differently, or just improved, their life in general. So that's what this is all about. And Brian, I want to kind of take this in a little bit different direction, being that you've talked a lot, and there's so many things, like I said, I want to kind of hit on, but something that you even mentioned and alluded to, I mean, you've learned some lessons along the way. You've had some ups, some downs, some highs, some lows. What's one of the biggest takeaways for you as you've gone through this journey of having a podcast, of creating this content? What's one of the biggest lessons and takeaways that you've had through this whole experience?
So I mean, most of them have been all positive. There's a few negatives. Like, I remember recording an episode back in the spring of this year, and it was like an awesome conversation. 25 minutes. We were both just hitting. And afterwards, the platform that I was recorded on didn't upload. And so it's like one of those conversations where you could probably redo it and it wasn't going to be the same. And so, my lesson out of that now, I usually do a 30-second test on every time to make sure everything's lined up. So you learn a little bit about the technology you're using. I would say that the positive side of it that I've learned is people want to talk about what they're doing, and no one's ever told me, no, I'm not going to do your podcast. So everybody wants to come on and share their story, but a lot of people haven't done this before. And so I always frame it that, hey, this is just you and I having a Zoom call and we just happen to hit record. That's the only difference, right? So, I try to make it real casual and comfortable. And again, I use these conversations to learn. And so there's been so many things that I've learned about people, companies, products. There's been doors that have been opened from those conversations that I never would have imagined being opened. I remember a guest that I had on who's, they're a big tech player in our space. And, our conversation naturally went down this pipe of, wouldn't it be cool if our stuff was doing things together? And lo and behold, that landed a nice partnership for FinLocker. It wasn't the intent of the conversation, but it naturally went down that path. So that you just never know where these things are going to go, either with the guest that you're facing off with, or on somebody else could be, listening and saying, wait a minute, if that makes sense for those guys to be doing something together, we should be thinking about that as well. So, the other benefit that, and I think I hit on this earlier, is the comfort now that I have getting in front of the camera, right? And so, yes, I have the FinTech Fridays, and we do publish religiously every Friday, but we've also sprinkled in some, FinTech Friday lives, and those are a lot of fun because you get kind of engagement from the audience while you're doing those, similar to what we're doing. But then what it's really led me down this other path of putting out a lot more content, on my, that's outside of the podcast. I talk a lot about financial fitness, financial preparation, financial literacy. It's a passion that I share with a lot of great people in our industry. And so I love getting on camera and just talking about kind of where my head's at in that space and how I think originators should be thinking about, their role in their local communities to be that trusted financial expert. So the comfort of doing that has all come from, doing 100 episodes of the podcast.
There are a couple things in there I want to kind of unpack, because number one, what it's done for your own confidence. And I'm not saying yeah, now you're arrogant about it, but you just feel comfortable behind the camera. Again, when you and I first met, at Flagstar years and years ago, we even chatted about this. And I remember you were a little bit hesitant. You didn't tell me no. I think I've only had, in all my time of hundreds of guests at this point, I've had two people tell me no. And for one was a very good reason. One was an understandable reason. One was, they just had a pure fear of it. And I even tried, I tried to coach them through it. Hey, the value that you will add to your community, it's way far and above and beyond that, this fear that you have, just having a conversation. They never want to. But again, I invited you to do it. You were a little bit nervous. You were but now, again, you and I are just having a conversation. We're not, sure, anytime I hit the record button, even to this day, you get a little bit nervous when you first get started, but then you kind of get settled in, you start having a conversation. And now it's two buddies hanging out, having a valuable conversation, sharing something that hopefully is going to resonate with one person that listens to this today. And they're going to be like, hey, I watched Josh and Brian. I'm going to go start my journey of podcasting. I'm going to go out and do this. I'm ready to go take this to the next level, which is for you and I, that's what we want to see. one other part of what you mentioned as well is the opportunities it will open that you're never expecting, whether it's in business, whether it's in just pure relationships with people. Again, you and I are a great example. We met at Flagstar. We met online on a conversation in LinkedIn, kind of messaged each other. And now it's blossomed into this, to where we hang out, we see each other, and we spend time together. This medium of social media and podcasting especially can build relationships, make connections, and ultimately that's what we need more of right now, especially with where the industry is at, Brian. Like, we need to be having these conversations. I love that it's conversations with you. So many people are always like, oh, it's just content. Really what you're doing is you're creating conversations. You're creating opportunities to even have those conversations. So I would say with that, for everybody listening, is, and something I know you have learned, this isn't something, if you want to start a podcast, it's not going to, hey, I'm going to start my first show, I'm going to put out a podcast and I'm going to just get business from it. I'm just going to see opportunities from it. I'm sure you, and I've experienced this as well, this is a long game. This is something that you have to be dedicated about. And you can't just, hey, I'm going to start a podcast in the pure idea of getting opportunities from it. If you come at it from that way, you're going to be disappointed. Your community watching is going to be disappointed. So just come at it from a way of like, I'm going to have cool conversations with cool people and cool companies. If you do that, it will just kind of fall in place from there.
Yeah. And I would say, and you talk about this a lot, be consistent. And being consistent doesn't mean you have to do it every Friday. Maybe pick it, do one a month. Start off just doing one a month, but be consistent. Say it's going to be the second Wednesday of every month, and just make sure it's there because people are looking for it. And the other thing I would share, Josh, is people get a little intimidated by, oh my gosh, what am I going to record it on? And, how am I going to get it published? And like I said earlier, I'm pretty much a one-man operation. And so I have this Logitech camera right here. We got the Blue Yeti mic right here. So that's the equipment. I record on a platform called Riverside. It's super easy to use to create the studio, to send the link, to invite people. They've added some cool features now. So after every recording, my guest goes away. I stay on for 15 minutes in the platform, and I download or upload the recording, and they drop it into their AI, and it creates clips right out of the gate. So now I've got 6 to 8 promotional clips that I can now use ahead of the episode getting published and beyond it to drive people back in. So it's serving another purpose, which is I want to be consistently visible on LinkedIn. And so this 20-minute conversation also creates 8 to 10, 30 to 60 second clips, right? So that lines up. And then I take every episode and also drop it into what is it called? Opus Clip, which is super cool. Opus Clip then actually does the same thing that I can do in Riverside, but what I like about Opus Clip is it also creates a transcript, and then I take the transcript, drop it into Chat GPT, and ask politely. I always ask please. I always say please in Chat GPT. I asked for a 3 to 4 sentence LinkedIn post to promote this clip from my podcast episode with Name the Guest, and boom, it's just like it sounds like it's a lot, but it's super easy, and it's helped. I go to conferences now, and I've been in the business for a long time, but I'm going to conferences now, and people are like, oh, I see you all over LinkedIn, and 2 guys last week at the MBA are like, it's fall season again. Are we going to see you blowing your leaves again this fall? Because I was doing that about a year ago. I'm like, oh my God, these guys remember a video from a year ago. It's crazy. But it builds awareness, and it may break through kind of some of those barriers of meeting people that you want to meet, but now they're coming up to you because they've seen your stuff and you're showing up.
It is breaking down those barriers. That is the funniest thing. First and foremost, I'm literally looking out my window, and that's what on my agenda this afternoon. My kids is going and blowing and raking leaves today, so I totally feel you there. But the fact that you had two people come up to you and talk about blowing leaves, they didn't. And again, the content that you put out and the conversations you have, I'm sure are incredible. But it's that type of stuff that connect you with people. Two guys are like, bro, it's like it's fall season, leaves are changing. Like that one thing. I mean, just what you said right there, Brian. What a perfect way to kind of wrap things up here is it's that type of content that truly connects with people. Again, the FinTech Friday and the conversations you have are brilliant. They're valuable, they're meaningful. But at the same time, it's those little things that we share from our day-to-day life that truly continue to build on top of. So they do tune in every single Friday. They do come back week in and week out, but you have to start. And you mentioned so many little nuances of this. Like, don't worry about what I'm on my iPhone using that, my old AirPods. Like you and I, like we've had studios before, but you don't need it. Don't overthink about that. Don't worry about it. Just get out there, start recording a podcast, have fun with it, enjoy it. It's, part of the journey is having those learning experiences as you've shared, Brian. You just got to, hey, well, that was a mistake. Oh, that one didn't record. Well, it is what it is. So as we wrap this up here, being that you are one of those, the most positive people I've ever met. And I mean this just because you've always had an attitude of like, hey, you gotta look at the glass half full. What would you give to people advice or some thoughts of wisdom as we wrap this up, as we are in challenging times? What are some things that you would share with people right now to help them get through these next 6, 12, 18 months?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to what we opened this conversation talking about, which is conversations. If first and foremost, if you're watching this and you're committed to this business, this industry, whatever it is you're doing in this industry, now's the time to roll up your sleeves and double down on having as many conversations as possible. We're gonna continue to see consolidation in the industry. Sadly, good companies are going away. We just had one recently, and there's still business to be done. People are always going to be buying and selling and wanting to finance housing. It's just the reality. It's just going to be how big's the pie. And as consolidation happens, it's all about the data, the size of your database, which is another way for saying, how many conversations, have as many conversations going as possible, and use tools like a podcast to do it at scale. Now's the time to double down. It's not like people are lined up today for mortgage applications, but there's a lot of people, I think, like I said earlier, there's 30 some million consumers who are of the age where they're, in normal markets, they would be buying their first home. Those are the people we should all be talking to right now, helping them understand their own personal, financial journey, their desire around homeownership, and how homeownership plays a role in building generational wealth. All the things that we all know. This is the time to share that knowledge, share that experience, and have those conversations at scale. And the market will come back to us in a way that's going to be meaningful. It may not be as meaningful as we saw, a few years back, but it's going to come back. And I'll say it again: if you're in a position where you have an engaged database, right, and a lot of conversations happening, you're at least in the game, and you earn the chance to win, earn the right to win based on doing those things today.
Ooh, you got to earn the right to win. What a great way to wrap this up. Conversations is what it's all about. Like you mentioned, Brian, people need to hear from us. They need our wealth of knowledge that we have. So be willing to have those conversations. Put yourself out there so people can, even if you're not having the conversations, like you said, you're not even having at the at-bat. So this has been absolutely brilliant. I cannot thank you enough. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, go back and listen to this, share this with your teams. And this is one of those episodes that I know if you're listening, you've got something out of it. So we really appreciate you being here. And Brian, as always, my friend, cannot thank you enough for sharing the wealth of knowledge that you have.
I love the opportunity to shred with you, Josh.
Always, bro. And we're going to be doing lots more shredding in the future, as always, my friend. I appreciate you guys. As always, we appreciate you. We love you. Now it's time for all of you to go shred, go show up, hustle, repeat every day. See ya.